Truth Unveiled here, and today I have so much to share with you. I'm going to be talking about Summer of Chaos and the chaos upheaval because it's only going to get worse from here. You need to be preparing accordingly. And I'm here at IntelliHub where it talks about what's known as and deemed and dubbed Operation Summer of Chaos Exposed. Obama administration, Soros, Black Lives Matter plan to activate martial law before the general election is revealed. And it says the 10,000 bought and paid for BLM dissidents to create chaos at the Philadelphia Democratic National Convention in late July. And this isn't the first time that they've done this. They've been doing this at multiple conventions. And trust me, it's not just Black Lives Matter that's involved with this. It's with any riot and with any protest that we've been seeing that can be caused by and triggered by anything at this point. If Donald Trump were to say something very racist like he's been doing, then it's going to trigger upheaval, and that is exactly what they want. Do not buy into the heat. Do not let them push your buttons because all they're trying to do is start and trigger this race war any single way they can, and they need you to do it. And that's why they're using Donald Trump to say all those racist remarks that he's saying towards Muslims and towards Mexicans. That's all it's for. But it goes on to say that Black Lives Matter leader DeRay McKesson had 2 of his email accounts hacked last Friday along with his Twitter. Reports indicate that the perpetrators successfully hacked into several of McKesson's accounts after posing as McKesson to a Verizon Tech wireless support operator in order to gain access and post a provocative tweet which endorsed Mr. Trump for the presidential bid. Now, it goes on to talk about this, and it goes on to talk about some of the tweets he made, but it's interesting because it also says, however, that the mainline press, of course, the mainstream media, they made no mention of the real purpose for the hack, which was to obtain secret information about a George Soros Obama administration sponsored plot, an elaborate operation dubbed the Summer of Chaos, which is aimed at shutting down both the Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention in order to trigger martial law nationwide, keeping Mr. Barack Obama in the White House beyond his allotted 2 terms under national security presidential directives. And that's not the only way that they're trying to do that. They're also going to do that by staging these weather events and staging all of this disaster. And believe me, that's exactly what they're getting ready for. You wonder why there's suspicious activity going on in Yellowstone in California right now with earthquakes? I'll tell you why, because they know exactly what time it is. But the question is, do you? Later on in this video, I'm going to prove to you once and for all that the government is vehemently preparing for martial law. I'm even going to show you some classified documents that even prove that our government's getting ready for martial law, courtesy all of the drills that have been taking place, not to mention the FEMA drills and what they've done with Cascadia Rising and other drills and tests that they've been doing nationwide every single day. But the question is, are you paying attention to these things? Now, it's also interesting because it talks about the plans, and it talks about some leaked messages and tweets and Twitter exchanges between DeRay McKesson and Samuel Sanyangwi in question. And it even talks about, I want to touch base with you about the Summer of Chaos. So far, we have over 2,000 people being bussed in from different cities and another 6,000 to 8,000 expected to drive into the Cleveland for the convention. But what if I also told you that this isn't the only thing that they're bussing? These aren't the only people that they're bussing. What if I told you that DHS and the USPS and all those other alphabet soups, that they're all conspiring to not only bust in these people for riots, but also to bust in so-called Syrian refugees to start chaos and upheaval in America? What if I told you these things? And what if I told you that they did the exact same thing for the riots that took place in Ferguson and in Baltimore? Because it's even been proven by witnesses themselves in Ferguson themselves that they did not remember any of those rioters in Ferguson. Why? Because they were not from Ferguson, because they were funded by the government to go to Ferguson and start upheaval and start chaos and to trigger chaos to bring in the military and to bring in martial law in Ferguson, literally. And that was just a test to get ready for it. Not to mention the Boston bombings hoax, which, yes, you can do your research on, in order to get ready for martial law in Boston and to take away guns and to do a giant gun swap. I hope you're seeing the bigger agenda and the problem, reaction, solution. That is is my hope with all this, because there's something bigger going on. You need to see the bigger agenda so that you will be ready for what's to come, so that you will be ready for the planned and staged chaos and the civil unrest that's also going to unleash in America when they no longer have food in the stores, and when they get rid of all the food, and when they shut down all of the banks so that you can no longer get your money out of the banks, so that you can no longer have money to use to spend on the food in the stores. And you think this is a conspiracy? Oh, you keep thinking that, because when it becomes a reality, oh, you would have wished you would have listened. But I'm here talking about what? The summer of chaos, and how leaked tweets also talked about this too, and how what? The leaders of BLM are what? Trying to get martial law to stop the election and to stop Trump. And that's what the government's also doing, because yes, Trump is controlled opposition, and all he's there to do is to try to spark this race war any single way he can. And he's doing a good job of it with certain groups in America, and it's only going to increase more and more here. The 2016 elections is one giant joke, in case you haven't figured it out by now. But in case you haven't, it's getting ready and preparing for these protests and riots, and that's not all. But as you can even see, here are some of the tweets that were exchanged between them. And you can even see it says, "We spoke 2 weeks and they want to start really pushing how racist Trump is now, instead of waiting so that others can what? Start getting the protesters ready to shut both conventions down." And that's what they all want to do, and that's what they're going to keep pushing, not just through Black Lives Matter, but also through all of these other stage organizations and these government organizations such as the KKK and all the other ones, and even the ACLU. All of them play a role in all of this, because they're getting ready for the new world order and martial law, and we're going to go over many of them in a moment to come. I've already gone over this document before, but I will go over it once again to reiterate the seriousness of all of this and tell you that no, this is not a conspiracy theory. No, this is some serious stuff going on, and you need to wake up now and see the world around you and see what time it really is, because your government and military are prepared and ready and armed to go, mobilizing as we speak. But if you're not ready, if you're not ready to stand in that evil day, if you're not seeking Yahuwah, I honestly do not know what to tell you. So I'm here at the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, and it says, request to conduct realistic military training, RMT Jade Helm 15. And what you've been noticing, and if you've been paying attention, there have been a lot more military drills, and drills over here, drills over there, drills regarding emergencies, drills regarding this, drills regarding that. Have you ever wondered and stopped and thought about why they're doing all these drills to begin with? Has that ever crossed your mind once before? If not, well, then you seriously need to think again and really start thinking about what's going on. I'm telling you, there's bigger things on the horizon if you're not paying attention to it. But it says the purpose of this is what? The commander of the U.S. Army Special Operation Command, or the USASOC, seeks a written invitation and approval from local officers to conduct realistic military training, or RMT, within their jurisdictions for joint military exercise known as Jade Helm 15 or JH15. And this hasn't stopped back then. They're also doing it with the UX drills this year in 2016, even as we speak. And it goes on to talk about what this training is. In a nutshell, it talks about how they're going to be doing risk assessments, legal reviews, IDs of training, staging areas, role plays, airfield, drop zones, and landing zone surveys. Now that may sound all fine and good, doesn't it? I bet it does. Now when you understand what Jade Helm drills are, then you understand what the bigger agenda is. But it's a challenging 8-week joint military exercise and conventional warfare that is to be conducted throughout Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. Don't get it twisted. They've been doing this all over the place. They've been doing this not just in those states, but in other places in secret locations that they're not going to tell us. Why? Because they want you to think it's some giant conspiracy, and that it doesn't mean anything, even though it does, because what I'm about to show you is about to blow your mind. Because as you can see, this is an unclassified document, isn't it? And this is an unclassified document that shows you what they're getting ready for with the Jade Helm drills. But what happens when I show you a classified document? Because here I am at the exact same document, as you can see, the exact same document. The only difference is that it's classified now, but look what it says, guidelines under martial law. And they're not going to show you that in the unclassified because they want you to think it's a hoax anytime they want to. Now, why am I showing you this? Because your government and your military have been vehemently preparing for these things. They've been vehemently preparing for martial law. They've been vehemently preparing for hostile forces. They've been vehemently preparing for civil unrest and all these things. They're preparing for this stuff, folks, and they have government documentation to prove it. And just who are they going to lock down and who are they going to consider domestic terrorists? Oh, you're going to find out who's considered a domestic terrorist, all right, because I'm telling you, there's a bigger agenda. Now, this part just talks about what? The DOD officials in correspondence with what? Reese AFB military bases. And it's interesting because aren't they converting military bases into FEMA camps? Oh, now it's making sense. And it even says how in this right here, how each enemy combatant detained at Reese AFB also undergoes an extensive assessment of the threat he poses. This threat assessment process is used to determine whether, notwithstanding his status as an enemy combatant, should remain detained in the control of the Department of Defense, or the DOD. And I've talked about the Department of the Defense in great detail, and how I talked about the Department of Defense is the organization that is funding these FEMA camps literally, and there's government documentation to prove that as well. Not only that, but notice how they always say, oh, this person poses a threat, that person poses a threat, because you could have ties to ISIS if you're watching this video right now. You could be considered a terrorist if you're watching this video right now, and there are government documents to prove that. We're going to go over that later on so that you'll see I'm not just making this stuff up, that this stuff is real serious, and you need to wake up to what's going on so that you can see what time it really is. Even in this classified document, it even talks about having zones, and zone 1 and zone 2. Oh, just like FEMA has different regions. Oh, are these regions going to be used for lockdown under martial law? Just like your government has different zones and works under different zones through the military, just like your military is also planning on flooding both the West and the East Coast. Will they tell you these things? Of course they won't, because they want you to keep thinking that everything's okay and that life is just going to go on. I'm telling you, it's only a matter of time. We don't know the day or hour. I do not set dates. But just know that the U.S. government is preparing for all these things and testing it in strategic locations, and that is why you continue to see events happen like Orlando with the riots and the protests that are happening, and all the problem, reaction, solution, courtesy George Soros and all those other Zionists who are funding all of these things to happen so that they can lock down America and declare martial law when they want to, just as they have with France and Belgium. Is it making sense now? But don't worry, your government has a plan. The United Nations has a plan, all right. And when you see what that plan is, oh my goodness, it's what? Depopulation. Just read about it in the United Nations Agenda 2030 that was executed as of January 1st of this year. Now I'm here at Bloomberg, and it says Venezuela readies biggest military exercise in history in response to what has been going on. And this was a couple of weeks ago, and I reported on this. But what I really wanted to turn your attention to is what's been going on in Venezuela and how all of this is soon going to become a reality in America and really worldwide, whether you want to believe that or not. I'm telling you this so that you can be aware of these things and be aware of the world around you and know exactly what time it is so that you can effectively prepare, whether that be physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. You will be ready to face and stand in that evil day because you will be prepared. You've done your research and you know exactly what they're getting ready for. But this says from the SBS that what? Venezuela is collapsing and the military has just got involved. And it says that the president has been deploying troops this weekend, claiming that the U.S. threatens to invade as tensions escalate in the Latin American state. And troops have been deployed around the Venezuelan capital of Caracas and in every strategic region this weekend due to the country's largest ever military exercise. Not only that, but they have also been suffering under an ever-deepening economic and political crisis that is still ongoing. And what? Because we see bare supermarket shelves are common, so there's hardly any food in the stores, and you don't think that's coming to America. There's also vital medicines that are in short supply, crime is rising, blackouts are occurring daily, and to save electricity, the government had to ask public sector workers to only show up on Mondays and Tuesdays, and this could soon extend to private companies as well, not to mention how it's one of the largest oil-producing nations on earth, so of course the Jewish Zionists have to go after it any single way they can because that is what they do. Just look at Syria and they'll tell you all about that. Why am I telling you this? Because it's time you see exactly the bigger agenda. Because in Venezuela, not only is there economic and political crises that we're seeing, but we're also seeing increased security, increased surveillance, more military on the scene. We're also seeing electricity being cut off, power outages, food shortages, water shortages, And the question is, you don't think that's coming to America. You don't think that's coming to the Western world. And yes, that includes Europe and Australia. You don't think that this is going to be a reality because it already is a reality in much of the world today. They just don't report on it because they want to pacify you any single way they can. It's time you seriously wake up and think again. Now, I'd already talked about this in some of my other previous videos, but the reason I'm bringing this back up is because you need to see exactly what's going on. But I'm here at Pan Am Post, which is a news outlet that is in Panama itself, and it talks about what hungry Venezuelans hunt dogs, cats, pigeons as food runs out. Economic crisis and food shortages lead to looting and hunting stray animals. So not only are we seeing the food shortages and the planned food shortages, courtesy the government and courtesy the Zionists, because newsflash, there's enough food for everybody, but they don't want you to know that. But not only are we seeing these things, we're also seeing how it's leading to people looting. We also seeing how it's leading to people to rioting. We also see how it's leading to civil unrest. And then what did Venezuela do in response to all that? They brought in the military in order to what? Calm the situation down. Problem, reaction, solution. And you don't think they're going to bring that to America when they shut down and collapse the dollar? I seriously suggest you think again and wake up to reality. Because if you don't think the government is targeting you as a domestic terrorist, well, it's time to guess again, because here are the 72 types of Americans that are considered potential terrorists in government official documents. And as you'll see, if you are even considered any of these things, you could be considered a terrorist in the eyes of the government. Now, I've gone over this in some of my other videos as well, and like I said, I'll leave the link so that you can see it on your own time, because I'm not going to go over all this, but below is the list of 72 types of Americans that are considered to be extremists or potential terrorists in official U.S. government documents. And that's another reason that they're pushing this terrorist agenda, is because not only do they want to turn the problem internally and make you into the problem, yes, you as if you're in America right now, but also if you're even speaking about the government or speaking against it, it's another way for them to come after your rights and freedoms, to your already little to no rights that you already don't have, because that's exactly what they're doing. But as you can see with the list below, if you're even talking about individual liberties or if you advocate for states' rights, you are considered a terrorist. And by the way, they have the government documents to prove all this, so I highly recommend you come check this out and see that no, we're not making this stuff up. But also, if you're considered anti-gay, anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, and if you're part of the Patriot movement, you are considered a terrorist. And by the way, if you're considered anti-immigrant, in some places it's illegal to even talk about anti-immigration on Facebook or other social media networks. You could get fined. Why is that the case? But if you're members of any of these organizations and members of some more organizations and coalitions, then you are considered a terrorist. If you're opposed to the New World Order, and if you're caught conspiracy theorizing, or if you're considered a conspiracy theorist, which is pretty much this channel, well, then you are a terrorist. If you're opposed to Agenda 21 or Agenda 2030 or anything of the United Nations, you are a terrorist. If you're concerned about the FEMA camps or even know about the FEMA camps and the New World Order, you are considered a terrorist. If you're considered part of the militia movement, and if you believe in any of the conspiracy theories or believe and advocate for gun rights, then you are considered a terrorist. And not only that, but it goes so deep, because if you are involved with anything quote-unquote extremist, according to the government, which is basically watching this channel and walking down the street because you suspect that the government's spying on you with your phone via the GPS, then you could be considered a terrorist. If you're considered anti-abortion, anti-Catholic, anti-nuclear, and right-wing extremism, and veterans as well, you are considered a terrorist. Oh, but that's not all. I've also gone over this document in my Walmart video as well as some of my other videos, but I would like to reiterate this document so that you can see exactly what's going on. But this document is called Project Megiddo, and what this document is an FBI strategic assessment of the potential for domestic terrorism in the United States undertaken in anticipation of or response to the arrival of the new millennium. And this had to do with Y2K, and in case in the event that there was an outage altogether, like an EMP, for example. So just because it did not happen 16 years ago does not mean it's not happening. And you're going to see exactly who they consider terrorists, because they don't consider murderers terrorists. They don't consider sociopaths terrorists, like those who work in the government, but rather they consider those who are in this identity or those who are in these groups as terrorists. They consider, if you even know about the New World Order and call it a conspiracy theory, they consider you a terrorist, even though President George H.W. Bush talked about the New World Order 11 years exactly prior to 9/11. Not only that, but if you're Christian, if you're white and you believe in white supremacy, if you're militia, you're considered a terrorist. And if you're a black Hebrew Israelite, you are considered a so-called terrorist. The real biblical Israelites, please wake up to this. Not only that, but if you're a part of apocalyptic cults, you are considered a terrorist. Why is that always the case? It's time to wake up and see the bigger agenda, not to mention gun control as well. But if you're even opposed to Zionism, and if you even know about Zionism, and if you say anything bad about Israel, you could be considered a domestic terrorist, and that's just the darn truth. So in conclusion, how are they going to attempt to shut down the system? Well, through many ways, and we already see them testing it out through rioting and protesting, through these protests and drills that they're doing. We also see it with no more water in the stores courtesy Flint. We also see all of the power outages that have been going on. That's another way that they're testing it, not to mention the EBT. And this is a big one. That's another way that how they're going to test it. They've already tested it nationwide a couple of years ago, back in October 2013, with the EBT shutdown nationwide. And I've done a video on this as well. Not to mention more false flags and Sandy hoaxes in Orlando's that are going to lead up to another 9/11 to lock down the nation and the bank ATM shutdown. Not to mention how they're going to stage all of this chaos and upheaval with the weather as well, because yes, you should be concerned. They control the weather. Yes, they do. And they're going to use that to try to shut it down too by making all this chaos in all these different places. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahushua so you can be escaped in that evil day. But this is Truth Unveiled here saying shalom.